Alright, I'm going to start up. I think I mentioned this to you yesterday, but I don't think I'm going to go any longer than 9 o'clock today, and it might be quite a bit less than that. You'll have the rest of the period to work on lab. What I plan on doing, Thursday with you, but Friday with everybody, is I want to meet with everybody for a 5 or so minutes individually, let you know where you are in here as far as your attendance, and let you know where you are in here as far as your grade. So if you have not been turning in homework, turn it in, please. It's not so much that I want to be a hard guy, but this is what we go by for grading. All right, and when you think about it, I gave everybody credit for chapters 1 and 2. So we've had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That equals 7. For every one of those, there was a lab. For every one of those, there was a homework. So that's 14 assignments, 25 points each. That's 350 points. All right, and if you don't have anything turned in by the weekend, for now, you can always turn stuff in late and get partial credit. But if you don't have it turned in by the weekend, that's 350 points. So that's 3.5 tests. So you might have a strong A going in here, but that's a way to knock it down to an F quickly. Again, like I said, it's not that I'm trying to be a hard guy. I'm just following the rules, for lack of better words. All right, I'm going to show you a couple things that I changed in here or added to the form. First of all, I didn't like the background color of the form. It was white. To me, it just was too blah-ish looking. So I came in here, and it's pretty much the same thing. But if you look at it now, it's got the gray background. I think that's easier to read. I bolded this. These were already bolded, of course. I did a little bit of work with margin and padding. All right. Whether you've been able to keep up with what I'm doing or whether you have not, when I'm all done with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip a copy, and basically I'm going to put it out there in the public on GitHub, and I will give you a link to it. So if you want that, you'll be able to have it. Starting tomorrow, we're going to go back. We'll add some stuff to this, but we'll basically rebuild this whole site, and we'll rebuild it using Flexbox, okay? My guess is it'll probably take 1 to 2 class periods, but since I'm not trying to go for an entire 3 hours and 50 minutes, I don't want to hear me for 3 hours and 50 minutes, and you probably don't either. But if we go 2 to 2.5 hours tomorrow, and that'll still give you a good hour plus to work on homework. And then whatever time we need on Thursday, that should allow us to finish it. All right. I think what we'll do is we'll just have Friday be a lab, and then we will plan on next Monday will be the test for chapters 7, 8, and 9. Okay. As always, it's a hands-on test, so it's open book, it's open notes. And again, you may want to keep this project or one of your assignments or many of your assignments that you've been working on open while you're working on this. Okay? It is literally, the test is 1 page. Now, it's not that you have to just do 1 page, but the test itself is 1 page in length. And it's setting all sorts of stuff up in a Flexbox. All right? I still felt that it was important to do this, to go through this, so that at least we had gone through an assignment as a class. Not only are you supposed to be watching Mr. Gudmiston's lectures on Flexbox, they're part of the homework. And again, those will do nothing but help you as far as taking the test. All right, so to show you then, I'm going to go back to the home page, and then I'm going to shrink my screen size down. And you can see I want to show you a couple things. First of all, reacts the way it should. Second, I fixed this. Well, it was working yesterday. That's funny that it's not working now, but I'll have to check. The problem with this, where this was going and covering this up right here, like that, and it wasn't yesterday, but we'll see, was I was using that property that's called z-index, and I was doing some work with it, and by making something z-index, what you're saying is you want that particular piece to always be in the foreground. That's why it was covering that up. All right, and the other thing, and there's almost no CSS that we have to really put in for the form. But for the form, so there that is. And again, by no means is this a perfect website. It's a start of a website. That's the way I look at it. And again, I think I mentioned this to you before, but I'm going to say it again anyway. We've rescheduled, and on Friday this week at 11:30, I'm stepping out, and I'm going into the office, and I'm having a Zoom conversation with Miss Kincaid from this animal rescue place. We still may end up doing something for her. I don't know. She said she wants to talk to me about what she's looking for. It was another one of these things where, gee, I have no idea what I want. That was kind of how she started the conversation. All right. And I said, well, you know, that happens a lot, that people don't know what they want or even don't know what they don't want. And I told her, and she said, I'd rather not have the first Zoom meeting with your class just in case it doesn't go that well, as far, you know, whatever. And that was fine. You know, all of our conversations that we've had, everything we've done has been electronic. I have no idea what she looks like or anything else. I sent her a URL to the Zoom meeting. All right. I'm going to have it in the office, and one of the reasons I am is so I can take this mask off because it'll be just me in there. All right. I have no idea where she's going. She is also a teacher, so I have no idea if she's going to be in a lounge or whatever. So I might not see what she looks like anyway. So she might just have her mask on. And again, that's totally fine. All right. I will let you know then next week where that stands. I mean, if it turns out that we sit and talk and she says, no, I don't think that this will work, okay, that's fine. We'll move on. And if she says, I think that this is something where your students can help me, that's great too. And then we'll move on. The plan next week then, just so you know, like I said, we'll have the test on Monday. All right. I probably, again, won't have it graded till at least Wednesday. At that time, we will go over it. What I'd like to do next week is do a lot more of the book. All right. I want to go over chapter 10 with you, and then we're just going to keep going from there. How long? We'll see how it goes. But there's a good chance that next week I will lecture on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Again, for probably about an hour to two each class period. And then the week after that, we're almost going to be finished with the HTML stuff. And we'll be ready to jump into JavaScript where you'll actually start programming. All right. The other thing I'm going to try to do is I was looking at this, and I was looking at what I did, what you have been doing with this site, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but there's a lot of repetition, especially in our CSS. A lot of times we're repeating the same color. All right, be it a background color, a foreground color, whatever, but we're repeating things. And what you can do to get around that is you can work with packages like that, you know, and if you've never heard this term, don't worry about it, like Sass. And what that is known as basically a CSS precompiler. And if you say, I have no idea what that is, that's fine. The idea is that you're able to create variables, CSS variables, and use them in your program. But I didn't think it would pay to go over stuff like that until we had JavaScript and you knew what variables were. All right. So my hope is that I can go and write and mock up some kind of a portfolio, and we can work on our portfolio as a class the last couple weeks and try to make it look really nice. All right. Okay. So that said, let's take a look at what I've got in here. The first thing, and you can all put this in right now if you didn't previously, and you probably did not, is in just a minute, we're going to add our mobile link. So you can put the code that you see there in gray, you can put that right underneath the link that you have to your style sheet. You can put that in all three of the files. And what that is saying is, hey, the media that we're using is screen, so when you're using a screen like this, other things are print, and I think there's another one that's reader, so if somebody's got like a screen reader type of thing. All right. But this basically is saying for anything from a min width of 0, which doesn't happen, to a max width of 768, what we want to do is we want to use our mobile CSS file. We're going to go over everything that's in there in just a couple minutes. Everything. But add this to contact.html, add this to about.html, and add this to index.html. You want to put it in all three because we want all three of our pages here to be responsive. All right. Any questions on what that is and what that is going to do? It will override this style sheet when the size of our screen is 768 pixels in width or less. That's why you probably, you may or may not have noticed when I was doing that, but if you take a look on here, you know, we looked at this, yeah, you saw this, but notice when it reaches 769, you can see how it changed. So that's known as a breakpoint. There's a breakpoint right there. So this is 769 and above. This is 768 and below. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. That's not the only way you can set these up. If I was setting up, for example, let's say that I was going to create my own company and I was going to sell something. All right. And now it's time to create the website for the company. I probably would be a lot more refined than what we're doing here. And what I mean is, I might have this, I might have a mobile sheet for a smartphone, another mobile sheet for a tablet, you know, some kind of a spreadsheet or a style sheet rather for landscape, and then one for everything else. So I might have 3 or 4 of them, or more, depending on what it was I was trying to do. All right, so that's one thing. The next thing I wanted to show you in here, believe it or not, this was hard until I thought, oh, you dope. And what I wanted to do was down at the bottom here, I wanted to add just a little bit of color. See that? Because the black, when it ran into the blue, looked really bad. All right? And for some reason, when I did it, it wasn't working, and it wasn't working, and it wasn't working. So what I did was I said, you know what? I'm going to, for lack of better words, we'll say cheat. I put a div in here to do this. This line is a div. And I put a div in, and I added margin. And guess what? It didn't do anything. I wanted padding. Once I put the padding in, this worked just fine. All right? And again, you may like the way it looks. You may not like the way it looks. But one reason I want to give you the finished product is if you don't like the way it looks, you'll then have it. All right? So, you know, one thing that we should do, nobody has said this, especially your instructor who should have, all right, and that is we should be going back in this project. Oh, that's my granddaughter. She got an outfit. She likes to play Princess Jasmine. All right, so I didn't want to scare anybody when you saw that, but I thought that picture was hilarious. All right, so when we look at this, let's see, where is it? WeSoM Flex. WeSoM, there it is. All right, one thing that we did in here earlier, right, we created that Git folder, correct? Okay, so what I'd like you to do is please open this up. So open up your WeSoM folder. At least I called mine WeSoM, and I'm expecting that you did the same. All right. And come in here, right mouse click, and choose Git Bash here, which will open up this window. And now you know how this is set up. And what I mean is, what do we want to do? Well, we've already done the git init because you've got that git file. So I'm going to put in here git add dot and hit enter. All right. Now, what I should have done first and didn't do, but it's fine, is I probably should have done a git status first. So let's do one now. Git status. And you'll notice there's a bunch of stuff that it's got here, because I had not committed any of this previously. We should have done this probably every day at the end of the day when we were working on it, but we didn't. All right. So what am I going to do? Well, we did our git add, so I'm going to come in here. Let me clear it so it's easier for you to see. So I'm going to say git space commit space -m space and then double quotes initial commit. Now, one thing that's important for you to do is to establish, if you're going to be doing a bunch of commits, etc., come up with some kind of a protocol, some kind of a way of doing it that makes sense to you. The idea behind using Git is if you ever have to go back to an earlier version, you know exactly what version to go back to. But if all I did here was to just say, instead of initial commit, if all I put in there was commit number 1, and let's say I had 30 of them, commit number 2, commit number 3, all the way to commit number 30. Now I want to go back. If all I've got there is commit number 26, I don't know the difference between commit number 26 and commit number 16, except 26 probably has more features in it. So you should do something with the message, and this isn't a great message, but it's okay. All right. So it came in. That was pretty quick. All right, and I always forget the darn command, so hold on a sec. I'm going to do this. I'm going to type in, let me clear again, git remote, you don't have to do it, -v, all right? There's nothing there, so probably I haven't set this up yet. In other words, there's no direct communication between what I've got out on GitHub and what I've got right here. Does that make sense? So I'm going to go out into GitHub. All right, and I know that under GitHub, I mean, I've got a bunch of stuff out here, as you can see. So, find a repository. WeSoM. Well, that says new. That's not good. I thought I made one with you the other day, but just in case, we'll see. Because if I come in here and I make a new repository, and I come in and I type in WeSoM, and it says, yeah, it's available. So I must not have done it. All right, so I'm going to do this. Again, I'm making it public. I'm going to create the repository. Now, you don't have to type or write, don't write in my stuff, but if you look on the screen here, that's mine, that's public. So that's what I'm going to push out there when we're totally finished today. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, so that will be out there. So what you'll be able to do if you want to is to put in that URL, and then there should be a green button there that says code. And if you click it, one of the things is to download everything I did into your own zip file. So if you want to do that, you can. Now, it'll have probably the same name as yours, so you'll want to change the name of mine probably, okay? But just so you know, I just want to make sure that you have it. Okay, so I'm going to grab this right here. And what I want to do is I want to do this. In fact, let me just grab it. I'm going to move this way down here. So what we want to do now is this. We want to say git remote add origin, and we want to put in our URL. Now, again, don't put in mine, put in yours. You're going to probably get some kind of an error or something if you put in mine because you're trying to push to my repository. Even though it's public, you can't push to it. You can look at it, and suggest changes or make your own changes, but you can't, to my knowledge at least, change mine. So I'm going to grab this one more time, copy it. So this is what I'm putting in there right now. I'm going to make it smaller so you can all see it. But I'm saying git remote add origin. You should do the same if you have not done so already and put in your wesom.git. How do you know if you've done it already? If you say git space, it's up here, remote -v. If you say that and nothing comes back, you have not done this line yet. If it comes back and it shows you this, you have done this line. I don't believe it hurts any to do it again, to my knowledge. I don't know why you'd want to, but so I'm going to grab this. Git space, remote space, add space, origin space, and then the entire path to my Git repository. Again, what this is doing is it's going to now allow the communication to take place, and it says whenever I want to push, it's going to push it out to my GitHub repository. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. So I'm going to grab this, copy it to the clipboard, come back to here, and paste it in. And hit enter. Okay, now notice if I do another git remote -v, do you see how it changed? All right. Previously, there was nothing there. And where it's got the fetch and the push, don't worry about those. All we're doing is pushing. The fetch becomes important if you are working on a project, and in that project, there are several of you sharing the same code, and somebody wants to make, to go and make a copy of the code and work on the copy. That's when that becomes important. All right? All right. Now, one more thing, because I have not told you this before. This is what we'll do next now. I'm going to do a git space push space origin space master. Okay, I think that's the right command, so let's double check. Git push origin master. Now, you've seen this before. You know how this works. All right? But once you push like we've done right now, just so you know, you can keep typing git space push space origin space master. You can keep doing that. Or after you've done it the first time, all you need to say is git space push, as long as you're in the right folder. Also, just so you know, in our politically correct world, and it's probably a good thing, just so you know, within 2 to 3 months, Git is planning on changing. Master is going away. It's going to be replaced with the word main, because master has a bad connotation to it. All right, so that is changing. I don't know exactly. I was reading an article on it yesterday, and they think that it's going to happen by no later than the end of the year. It might be before that. All I'm saying is, so you'd be saying then git space push space origin space main instead of master. All right, so I hit enter. It says origin. Oh, you have to spell origin right. How's that? Don't write origin. It's origin master. Okay, hit enter. And it's going through its stuff. As you would guess, the more complex your site is, the longer this is going to take. And when I say the more complex, the more files you have, the more images you have, etc. Because what it's doing now is it's syncing my project with what's out in the cloud. All right, so again, if I go back one more time, and I'm here, you've already seen this, so if I go back and I refresh my page right now, there it is. Anybody have any questions on what we just went through? Is there anything in there that doesn't make sense? All right. So now I am going to start making changes, and I guess kind of in my own mind, I got to kind of think about where I'm making these changes. So in the next time that I come in and I do another commit, that commit won't say initial commit now. All right, but what I'm going to put in there instead of initial commit is I'm going to put in the fact that we added the mobile.css file and we made a couple changes to the contact file. All right, so, and it just made me think of something, but that's fine. We'll hit on that in just a minute. So let's go back to the contact.html file. Okay. And so again, we added in here, remember we want the font awesome, so if you didn't put that in last time, all right, if you didn't put in the font awesome last time, make sure you copy it to this file because it has the little icons in it. Also, I should mention this because when I think of things, I like to bring them up, so because otherwise I may forget to do it later. All right, so I'm going to type in here font awesome CDN, and I'm going to hit enter. And it says set up web front with CDN font awesome. If you don't know it, because your instructor should have mentioned it to you already, but just in case he didn't, all right, just in case he didn't, A CDN is a content delivery network. So rather than me, having to always worry about different things, it's kind of what I did, but I can go out online and I can find out where Font Awesome is, and I can link it in that way. So really, all I need, if you look in here, it's got rel equals style sheet, all this other stuff. This stuff that's in here where it says integrity equals and cross origin equals anonymous, that's put in there for security reasons. So that if somebody were to come in and try to get into your site and possibly go and make changes to your Font Awesome file, all right, whatever that would happen to be, maybe put a bogus image in there that if people clicked it, would just give them garbage or put malware or whatever on their system. But really, for what we're doing, all we need is up to here, and then we have to put in an ending greater than tag. Does that make sense to people? So I'm just going to copy this just so you see it. It's a different path than the one I gave you. It's just another path. There are literally CDNs up the wazoo. All right? And again, what I mean by that is there are a lot of different places online that will house this stuff. Microsoft typically has a lot of CDNs. Google has a lot of CDNs. Now, what a lot of people like to do is, hey, this is Font Awesome I'm working with. They like to go out to fontawesome.com and look for their CDN because that's the one literally for the product itself. We're going to get into Jquery in a few weeks, and Jquery, one way you can load Jquery is using a CDN. Or you can copy the file to your own CSS folder and use it there. All right? We're also going to get into, when we do Bootstrap, there's a bootstrap.min.css, which is a minified version that we'll use, and a bootstrap.min.js, which is a minified JavaScript file that you'll use. You can download those directly, or you can download those using the CDN. We'll talk about all that stuff. So you're going to hear this again and again is what I'm telling you. All right. So what else did we have in here? Well, none of this stuff changed. Just so you know, none of that stuff changed. I did come in here, this BG light, background light, BG dark, etc. I'm going to go back and show you in the styles so you have them. They're all in there now. Those are typically referred to as utility classes. In fact, what I think we'll do when we do the Flexbox one, starting tomorrow, is we'll take all our utility classes, we'll put them in their own CSS sheet. Why do that? Because then I can use it in multiple programs, right? Okay, I'm just pulling out the utilities, the stuff that I want to use over and over and over again. All right. So this was light. Notice you'll see there that there's some padding right there. But there's two sections in here. There's the contact form. Then underneath that is the contact info. Okay, and then I put this real little div in here, but we'll talk about that later. The form is the form itself. Again, div, class equal container. All right. This, where it says class equal gray div, that's what made it gray. Okay, you don't have to put that in. And again, you're going to have the code. Okay. This was the heading, the main heading in here, that contact us. This was the paragraph down below it. And we went over the form in quite a bit of breadth and coverage yesterday. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on the form because when we get to chapter 13, that's all on forms. When you come in that day, we're going to build a form, a contact form as a class. It'll be more complex than the one that you see right here. And the reason for that is by that time, we'll have gone into more widgets and controls we haven't talked about yet. So this is a very simple form with just name. And typically you would break name up into a first name and a last name, but we didn't. It's okay. And we're not, other than required, we're not doing anything there. Okay, you could put, 1, 2, 3, and it would think that's your name. I don't know if you can hit the space bar if it would take that or not. All right, but we'll even worry about that later, as far when we talk about form validation. Email, so right now this is just required, and we gave it a placeholder. Email, since the type is email, it will check to make sure that the email not the email is valid, but the email is formatted in a valid way. There's no way that it can go and check every email address. So if I put in there, green@yellow.com, it's going to think that that's valid whether there is a green@yellow.com email or not. All right. Okay, then we've got our message. The message was a little bit different because that's a text area. Typically with a text area, and all I did was give it a size. Typically with a text area, you give it the number of rows you want and the number of columns you want. And you can make that bigger. My guess is that either you, a parent, or somebody, sometime in your life, you've gone to see a doctor for the first time, and you were still asked to fill out some kind of a paper form. And, for example, a doctor might ask something like interests. All right, why? Because if you put in there skydiving and bungee jumping, they might think, oh, this person might be coming here quite a bit, or not. But the point is, that's the kind of thing that you often put into a text area. Comments, or something that you have no idea how long it's going to be. All right? Now, we made that required. I mean, if somebody's going to be sending you a message, it would sure make sense if there was a message. Because if we didn't make it required, they could put in their name and they could put in their email. All right? I mean, it would be like one of you, if you weren't going to come or whatever today, and you just sent me an email with nothing in it. I would probably not know why you were sending the email. I might be able to figure it out if you didn't show, but other than that, I wouldn't know. All right. The other thing, too, if you look here, I wanted that button to be centered. It's not centered right now. Okay? In fact, if you take a look at it, let's see. You'll notice that now the button is centered on the page, whether the page is full size or we have cut it down. It still remains in the center. All right? Again, it's not that any of that stuff is that hard to do, but you have to, you've got to look at it this way. If you've never heard this before, and maybe Angie, you have, most people equate computer software to an 18-month-old child. Seriously. In that that's about how many words it understands. And like with an 18-month-old child, all right, if they're doing something wrong and you raise your voice to them, that doesn't make them do it right. I've watched people get real mad and they're banging the hell out of their keyboard. That's not going to make it work any better or any faster either. Not that I know of. All right. So after that, we came in here, and these were the three icons that we put in. So that was the hotels, that was the location or the address, the phone number with phone, and the envelope for the email. Then I added this at the bottom. That was that extra div that you saw at the very bottom. All right. Other than that, there's not a lot of new stuff in here. So let's look at the mobile. I forgot to bring my hard copy, but I do have this. Now, don't start typing. Don't do anything. Let's go over it first. All right. Let's think about what we want to have happen. All right. The logo right now is floating to the left. We want it. What we have is a left logo and a nav bar with 3 items on the right. When we make it small enough, we want all of those to be on their own line. So the way we're doing that is we're saying float none for both the logo and for our ULs and LIs. All right? And we're telling it to align the text to the center. So we're removing the float here. Notice in here we're adding some padding. This is all an eyeballing type of thing. In other words, you might look at that and go, you needed more padding. 5 pixels is very little. I mean, we could have put a ton in there, but once you do it, it gets really, really big. And you might look at this and say, hey, you know what? As far as this goes, why didn't you just leave it? Because it's not, even if you made it small, it would all fit. And you know what? It probably would. But the problem is, what if we add more stuff here later? All right? Then what's going to happen is if you make it too small, these will be here, and then the other ones will come right underneath them, and that looks pretty bad. When we get into and start working with Bootstrap, you're going to see this hamburger menu that I mentioned before. Right here, it's like with Slick Nav. There will be the little hamburger right there with the 3 lines through it. And when it gets small enough, it'll change to the Hamburger Menu. When you click on the Hamburger Menu, it'll open it up. It's almost like an external, even though it's not external. All right, so what else is in here? Well, that's pretty much it for the nav bar. So this is our home view. I decided to get rid of that image that we had. That's not the big image. That's the littler one that was on the side. We didn't have to do that, but I just decided to do that because it gave a chance to show you display none. I want you to understand this because not only is there a display none, I believe there's a display hidden. There's a big difference between those. Hidden means literally you're making it invisible. None means you're removing it from the flow. It's gone. You understand the difference? Because if you see this big gap in here, you probably did a display hidden where you meant to do a display none. All right. So this was that, remember we had it on one side, we had the image, on the other side we had the content. Well, that content originally was floating to the right, and it was taking up 50%. Now we're doing no floating, and we're making the content take up all 100% of the screen. Okay? These were the boxes. Again, if you remember, on the bottom of the first page, or the bottom of the third page, there were 3 boxes. They were each floating left. They were each taking up 33.3%. Notice now there's no floating, and they're taking up a width of 100%. Does that make sense? All right. So this was on the About page. Again, I had to tweak and play around a little bit with the margin and the height, etc. And, you know, is this the best way of doing it? It's a way of doing it. All right. One thing, if you don't know me very well, is I'm never ever going to say, hey, the way I did, that's the best way you can do it. All right. Somebody can always figure out a better way. All right. And I don't care if it's a program, if it's a web page, what it is. All right. So on our About, we had a left and right. Remember, they were taking up each half the page. Now, no floating, setting the width again. Okay? This is that heading that I think was like 40 or 50 pixels, but I cut it down. One thing you don't want, by default, if you shrink your screen size, if you don't tell the text on there to shrink, it won't shrink. All right? Unless you tell it to. This was that thing I told you about with the testimonials. I was playing around with the z-index, making it bigger, smaller, etc. And all the z-index does is the bigger the z-index, the more towards the foreground it goes. The less the z-index is, the more towards the background it goes. So if you've got something, let's say that I had an image and I wanted to overwrite some text that's underneath it, I would give the z-index for the image a higher number. Or vice versa, if I wanted the text to be over the image. All right? And then finally, this is all I had to do for the contact form, was to put some top margin on there. All right? So, if you want this, we can go through it right now. So like I said, if you want to put it down, you don't have to, because you have the text already. All right? So, what I'm looking at in here, and I don't know, I was just going to jump back here. And... well, I thought I kept it up, but maybe I didn't. That's it. All right. So look, if you look in here, what do I have? Well, that's pretty much my final About, my final contact, my final index. All right. And those are the images. So there they all are. Okay. And if I go back again, there's the CSS, and the mobile is already in there. So you have that if you want it. All right. And I'm not going to lie to you. I took an online class, and we did something in the class very similar to this. The one they did looked nicer because the colors were much more muted, all right, etc. So it probably looked nicer. It was for a hotel. But the idea was pretty similar. All right. So again, like I said, you've got that. In fact, if you click on here, there's the whole file. So if you really want to do that with yours, you can do that. You know, and you can copy everything in if you want to. So when you look on here then, when you bring it up, you're going to have something that looks like this. All right, it's public, but there should be something in here that says code. When you click that, All right, there is the URL, but you're already there. But if you want to download what I've done as a zip file, that's probably the easiest way of doing it. You can do that. All right. Anyone who goes out and makes a project and makes their stuff public, you're able to go out and do this as long as you know what their login in GitHub is. You can do that. Most people will tell you that if they do go to the trouble of putting something out there and making it public, they're doing it because they don't mind sharing it. All right? I would say, though, that if you're going to do that, don't do this. I mean, the guy who teaches this class, I was watching one of his lectures, and he was kind of laughing. He wasn't mad. The guy, he's very, it's that Brad Traversy that I mentioned to you. He's a very different guy. He went one semester to a technical college, said this ain't for me, and started teaching himself. Now, he had the wherewithal to be able to do that. Maybe some of you do. I don't know. Some people do, some people don't. But he's listening to him. He literally lives almost 24 hours a day with migraines. He's got a kid who's autistic, and he's got a lot of other stuff going on in his life. All right? But that said, he still has got a great mental attitude. He's unbelievably, I mean, we have talked electronically, so he knows who I am. All right? He's literally taking a break from what he's doing right now, and he's got a very well-known channel. It's Traversy Media, and he's having guests come in and do stuff. I volunteered if he wanted somebody to do something. Since I'm just an instructor and not a professional, I guess. He said, I'll take it under advisement, which is okay. I'm not offended one way or the other if he does or doesn't. But the point is, what he said was, you know, I've gone out and people have sent me their portfolios. And they ask me what I think of them. And I go out to the portfolio, and it's the thing I did. It's exactly the thing I did. He said, I look at the code, they haven't changed anything. No colors, no fonts, no pictures. We have done that. So we wrote a lot of the stuff. I didn't do everything he did. So I looked at it like, wow, that was a great starter file or a great starter program. Okay. The Flexbox one, I'm doing that all on my own because he does a totally different thing for Flexbox. We're not doing anything like that. That's why it's taken me a little longer to get going with the Flexbox stuff. All right. Any questions now on anything that we've done? Does the stuff in this site, does it make sense to you? Is there anything that's in there that doesn't make sense to you? I was talking yesterday, and I've been leaning in the afternoon. If you didn't know this, I may have told you, I may not have. I only have one student, one second-year student. All right? I would have had two, but one of them, literally, when the weather changed, stopped coming. In fact, my class last semester, we had more students. We ended up with Angie, and we ended up with Keegan, my other student, because everybody else just stopped coming when we went to online. That's why one of the reasons I'm in here, and I don't want us to go online because I don't want to lose students like that. But I talked to Keegan, and I told him where we were in here, and I told him I was thinking of having us do a website as a class, and he said, well, speaking for me, I think that would be really helpful. He said there were times last semester where I was afraid kind of not afraid, but I didn't really want to speak up and say I didn't get this or I didn't get this type of an idea. So I kind of leaned on him. So that was the idea behind this, is hopefully now, if you were asked to do something similar to this, no Flexbox, but if you were asked to do something similar to this, you'd at least have a comfort level in doing it. And if in the next 2 days we redo this with Flexbox, then come next week, you will have a comfort level using Flexbox. All right? Because what's left in here? Just so you know. So where are we, in other words? We have gone through this first section. Everything that's in there. The stuff that's in there should make sense to you. This was kind of a review of that. All right? We've gone through 9. And again, you've been asked to go through and look at Mr. G's thing on Flexbox that he did. All right, there's also one I think he did on grid. Next week we're going to talk about grid as well, but we're not going to spend as much time on it. It's not that it's not as important, probably isn't used as much. In fact, most sites that use it in conjunction or in parallel with using Flexbox. All right, but then we're going to go through these two chapters we're going to do in one day because they're not hard. Images and icons. You already know most of the stuff about images. Probably the only thing you don't really know about images is there are new HTML5 tags that we haven't talked about. There's one called fig caption. All right, and fig. There's for figures. All right, we'll talk about that. Okay, and icons. You know how to make a favicon. You know what icons are. You now know how to use Font Awesome. All right, tables. They're not used that much anymore, but we will go through them. We'll create a couple tables. We'll talk about how to use CSS to pretty them up, so to speak. All right. Forms, if it turns out, what I'd like to do is next Tuesday is to go over Chapter 10, Wednesday to go over 11 and 12, Thursday to go over 13, and probably Friday to do all three of these. And it looks like a lot, but we'll see. If it takes too much time, then we'll push it off till the next Monday. All right? Then you'll probably get virtually, if we do that, a whole week for lab. All right? And the stuff, I mean, I'm not going to give you 5 chapters with the stuff and say they're doing a week. But I'll probably give you a whole week to work on it and say they're doing 2 weeks. All right? Then we've already gone over these two. You might remember that at the beginning here. We went over designing a website and a little bit on deploying. All right? And then we'll spend a period on 19 and 20. Why? Because that's the other book. So when we get to that point, we will be changing books. All right? There's one more thing. I'm not going to do it with you right now. But there's one more thing that we probably will end up doing tomorrow before we go in and start on the Flexbox one. And that is, we're going to push this website out to the internet. So either you're going to push mine out there or you're going to push the copy that you made, whatever you want. But you've got, till tomorrow to try to fix yours up if you're going to use yours, which is totally fine. All right? No questions? All right. Just about 9 o'clock. You want to take a break? Take a break. All right? Take a break when you need to take a break. The rest of the period then is yours.